Well, howdy there, Internet people. It's Bo again, and welcome to The Roads with Bo. Today is July 14th, 2024, and this is episode 47 of The Roads Not Taken, which is a weekly series where we go through the previous week's events and talk about news that was unreported, underreported, didn't get the coverage I thought it deserved, or I just found it interesting. Then, after that, we go through some questions from y'all, picked by the team. I haven't seen him yet, so you're getting kind of an off-the-cuff answer. Okay, so starting off in foreign policy, General Milley has suggested that up to one-third of U.S. forces will be robotic within the next 10 to 15 years. Trump's allies are reportedly trying to find a way to frame NATO in a way that Trump can understand. But they are apparently having issue explaining basic concepts of foreign policy to him so he will understand the importance of NATO to the United States. The United Nations is begging for funding to assist Palestinians who are shuffling around from evacuation point to evacuation point as Netanyahu tries to play whack-a-mole with Palestinian forces. At this point, the dynamics are there. The dynamics that led to the United States being in Iraq for as long as it was, they are currently present and underway. The only hope of avoiding a forever war, which will benefit absolutely nobody, is for an agreement to come quickly. In U.S. news, the Wall Street Journal is reporting that a majority of economists think Trump would reignite inflation if he wound up back in the Oval Office. A judge dismissed Rudy Giuliani's bankruptcy case, which would allow creditors to move against his assets. A father in Arizona has been charged after allegedly leaving his child in the car for 3 hours. Please understand, it's not wise anyway, but due to the heat, kids, pets in cars, you just don't do that. The Senate Judiciary Committee has indicated it will review the Supreme Court decision about presidential immunity to try to find some, quote, legislative solutions. So it appears that the Senate Judiciary Committee is concerned about the amount of leeway the Supreme Court has bestowed upon the presidency. A bipartisan group of senators is moving to ban lawmakers from trading stock. We'll see how that works out. It appears that Samsung workers have launched an indefinite strike. In cultural news, Alec Baldwin's Rust shooting case was thrown out. George Clooney called on Biden to drop out. In contrast, Bernie Sanders wrote a piece throwing his support behind Biden. In science news, AT&T had a major breach. If you are a customer of theirs, or were between May 1st, 2022 and October 31st, 2022, you want to look into this. As I understand it, the information that kind of got out was the numbers that were called by the customer, who they texted, the numbers that were texted, how many times those interactions occurred, and stuff like this. This also applies to other providers who use AT&T's network. Okay, conservation groups have filed a lawsuit challenging a federal decision to not provide protection for wolves in the northern Rocky Mountain area. The world population is expected to peak at 10.3 billion in 2080. It is currently 8.2 billion. Forecasts suggest a 70% chance of La Nina coming in between August and October. What does that mean for most people? And the thing they're going to notice the most? More hurricanes. In oddities, a federal judge has ruled that the federal ban on stills is unconstitutional. But I would not, I wouldn't use that information just yet, because please keep in mind there are state laws. I would wait for this to play out a little bit further before I got super excited about that. Okay, moving on to the Q&A. What do you think about the idea of swapping Harris and Biden on the ticket? There's a lot of value in the incumbency. A lot. It provides a lot of value. If there's going to be a swap, that's probably the smart one. I am not sure it's a good idea, but out of those that have been floated, this one makes the most sense to me. If the 14th Amendment is used to create fetal personhood, could a pregnant woman be charged for drinking, smoking, driving recklessly, etc.? I would imagine so. Would it be possible for an older woman to be found liable for having a high-risk pregnancy? That one, the next two kind of get out there and do a stretch. But there's no way to know, because they have lost the plot on this issue. So it would definitely have a lot of unforeseen consequences. How that gets applied, I mean, it's not just stuff like this. Think about when child support starts. When does health insurance take over? There's a whole bunch of stuff that would have to be decided if they went this route. Is NATO a mechanism for colonialism? It depends on what you mean by that question. Are countries joining NATO, is that colonialism? No. Is NATO itself a mechanism for colonialism? No, not really. However, and this is where there's this weird element of truth to something where the direct answers are no. It's not NATO. NATO is an umbrella organization, but many of the countries that are members of NATO engage in that behavior. And many times they cooperate, but they don't cooperate through NATO. However, the fact that NATO exists and provides that level of cooperation, it facilitates the cooperation that occurs outside of NATO. So it isn't, the direct answer is no, but that's not really what you're asking. The direct answer to your question is no, but there is way more truth to this statement than I think people would want to acknowledge. NATO itself isn't used in that way. However, the level of cooperation that NATO facilitates among these countries outside of NATO, that certainly does. And that level of cooperation probably would not exist if NATO didn't exist. So it's not a mechanism for it, but it's a thing that provides a lot of byproducts that definitely facilitate it, if that makes sense. Does this seem legit? The left needs to challenge every federal environmental and social regulation that is too weak. Flood the courts with cases that they now must decide. Tie them up with our cases. SCOTUS only decides a tiny fraction of appeals, and the lower courts have been treated to Biden's appointments. I get it. Without Chevron, the judges are going to be deciding. So if you were to basically play the same game with cases that were where the regulatory agency was too lenient, you might get a positive outcome. It makes sense to me. That's something I would... Most environmental orgs, they have just an army of attorneys. They will think of this. If this is something that's viable, they'll think of it and do it. I don't know enough about that process to have a firm opinion, but it tracks to my way of thinking. Okay. A while back, I sent you a message expressing concern for what I saw as accelerationist attitudes in leftist circles around the upcoming election. Frankly, it really scared me that some people who are aligned with me politically would refuse to vote for the Dems, knowing that it would lead to another Trump presidency, and knowing how much worse that would make things for not just my community, I'm a trans woman, but for everyone who isn't a wealthy, straight, white Christian man. That was before everyone was talking about Project 2025, and now the GOP's plan for fascism is getting wall-to-wall coverage. I'm seeing an evolution in rhetoric from some of those same lefties. Voting for Biden won't prevent Project 2025. The first time I saw it, I was stunned. Can you explain to me where this sentiment is coming from? I know there's a general belief on the left that there's no functional difference between Republicans and Democrats, but when it comes to my community, that couldn't be further from the truth. Okay, so you have two things here. One, that general belief from the left that there's no functional difference between Republicans and Democrats. If prior to Trump, that statement is more true than I think most would want to admit. If you are outside the normal window of U.S. politics, especially if you're looking at it from the left, you have a right-wing party and a center-right party. And many times the differences really weren't that pronounced. Trump changed that. There is a very large difference between the two parties now. And then I don't even know what that means. Voting for Biden won't prevent Project 2025. If Biden wins, Project 2025 would not be a thing. That is literally, it absolutely would prevent it. I mean, the Heritage Foundation would probably try again for 2029. But it would stop it for the time being. My guess is that people have bought into the narrative of, two wings of the same bird, two sides of the same coin, there's no difference for so long, that they're not seeing that the differences have become pretty pronounced. I don't get the part about Project 2025, though. That doesn't... I can understand people... Because for so long, the parties weren't really that different. I can get that. I understand why that sentiment is there. The idea that Biden would enact a radical right-wing agenda, that just doesn't track. I don't understand where that would come from. If Biden is the nominee and wins in November and Harris takes over for him immediately after January 21st, 2025, would she still be eligible for 2 more terms under the law, since she was not elected president but ascended to the presidency? No. The 22nd Amendment. The 22nd Amendment says 10 years is the max. So it would be possible for Biden to not resign and just kind of take a back seat for 2 years. Once 2 years had passed, then he could resign, she could ascend to the presidency, and then still run 2 more terms. But there is a constitutional thing there. But if he takes a back seat and doesn't resign, she effectively would get 12 years if she was reelected twice after that. A lot of people are calling for Biden to drop out, and it's starting to frustrate me a little, not because these calls are meritless, but because these don't seem to have a transition plan. The talk I've seen come across is let's hope for the best, when they should be detailing how to address the potential obstacles for dropping, like any court challenges, campaign finance stuff. Do you by chance know what the plan should be if Biden decides to drop out? If Biden drops out, it is going to be a way bigger mess than those people who are super supportive of it realize. It is less of a mess if Harris becomes the nominee, but it's still a mess. No, I don't have a plan because I can't foresee all of the different challenges. It would be a mess. There's a reason that there are a lot of people who aren't incredibly supportive of Biden who are like, please don't drop out, because it would cause major issues and limit the likelihood of defeating Trump. What's the best sandwich? There are so many ways to answer this question. I don't know, sausage, egg, and cheese from Waffle House. I know occasionally you speak in videos about Democrats running in areas where they might need help. Trisha Calvarisi is running against Boebert in Colorado 4. I was hoping you could give her a shout out. I don't work for the campaign. I live in another district. But I know we all have to work together. I can look, I'll look into her. I don't do endorsements if that's what you're looking for, but I mean, I'll look and see, what her platform is. Biden has been stating that if he's reelected and the Democrats gain the House and the Senate, he will enshrine Roe v. Wade into law. Were this to happen, how safe would it be from the Supreme Court then declaring such a bill unconstitutional? Pretty safe. Pretty safe. The core there is that Roe v. Wade was really privacy. They could absolutely, the federal government could absolutely create the exact same effect as Roe v. Wade through legislation, and in a way that is completely compliant with the Constitution, and in a way that would make it incredibly hard for even this Supreme Court to have issue with it. This is from the team. It says, rephrasing this because the message contains so much personal info you can't use it at all. Okay. Is what happened in Oklahoma City in 1995 consistent with a device delivered by truck? Yes, I've seen that theory starting to float around again. No, that's exactly what it looks like. If you want a comparison, look for Beirut. Look for the same thing in Beirut, and you will see that. No, that is what it looks like. It wasn't something else. That is exactly the shearing of the face of the building like that is exactly what it looks like. I don't know why that conspiracy theory is popping up again. It's been around a while, but I hadn't seen it. And then all of a sudden, over the last month or so, it has shown up in a number of different places, and it just doesn't add up to me. Do you think this Biden age thing is a Republican or Russian psyop? I don't understand. Do people not understand what is on the line? People say Biden is too old, but don't offer any actual ways to solve this supposed problem. Do I think it's a psyop? No. it might be being amplified. Normally, especially with Russian information operations, they tend to find something that is organic and amplify it. Could that be happening? Sure. Do I have any evidence to suggest that? No. But it would make sense if they were. But that doesn't mean that they just astroturfed it. They normally don't do that. Do you believe that the mystic Rasputin would have made a fantastic televangelist if he would have been around in the 80s and then been able to rebrand as a new megachurch pastor in the current day and age? Maybe. I think a lot of his stuff, from what I understand, his influence and the way he was able to get a hold on people was more personal contact than a televangelist was able to do in the 80s. But I mean, it's an interesting question. I don't know. I may come back and think about that a little bit more at a different point. Okay, America is more polarized than ever. The situation between Democrats and Republicans seems toxic. Our world has several major conflicts / wars. Climate change are affecting the whole planet. Some people believe we are seeing the beginning of a completely new balance of power in the world. Despite all of this, why are so few in the United States voting? In a safe world, I can, to some extent, understand low participation. But those who don't vote, about 40%, why are they not affected by today's situation enough that it justifies voting, regardless of the person's political opinion? It goes back to that previous question. For a long time in the United States, the parties really weren't that different. And I think there's a lot of people who have missed how different they've become. I think that has a lot to do with it. It was a joke, but also not a joke, to say things like, I don't vote. I don't want to encourage them. There is definitely there's a disconnect when it comes to how much the parties have changed and how different they are from each other today than they were in any time prior to 2016. Okay. I'm a vegan and have watched your videos for a long time. I remember you making the argument that vegans have perfect argumentation, and it really stuck with me. I didn't say perfect, really good, near perfect. Recently, I saw a comedy act by another Southern guy who seemed to steal your bit. I was wondering how you feel about it. Here's a link. And then in parentheses from the team, it says, it's Drew. Okay, so I've been asked this before. If you don't know, a while back, like years ago, I put out a video that was basically talking about how vegans, if you actually sat down and addressed their arguments at face value, they're really hard to overcome. And I use it as an example of how perfect argumentation doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to change somebody's mind. Drew Morgan, who is a comedian, he kind of said something similar as far as vegans having really good argumentation. And he said this a while back, but I don't actually think that he took my video and just reframed. I don't think that's okay. So you have two options. Either A, he saw the video, took it, ate it, made it more comedic, worked it into his bit, and exposed that idea to a wider audience. Okay. I don't think that's what he did. But if he did, good. I don't have any issue with that whatsoever, to answer the direct question. That doesn't bother me in any way, shape, or form. I don't claim ownership over that in any way. If he did do that, good. I hope he does it more. But I don't think that's what happened. So we both grew up not in the same area, but in the same cultural region. And we have a lot of similar cultural influences. I want to say his dad was a preacher. My grandfather was a deacon who gave sermons, very involved in the church. We both seem to value storytelling as a method of getting a deeper point across. We both appear to value really strong argumentation. There's a lot of similarities. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that two people who have a whole lot of similar cultural influences, who were then exposed to left-leaning and progressive ideas, would reach similar conclusions about the exact same argumentation. I would guess that it's independently developed. But if it's not, I don't have a problem with it at all. And I wouldn't have any grounds to have a problem with it, because frankly, that bit he has about the good Southern accent, I have used that a lot. There is definitely a heavy element of truth in that story. So now I don't think he did. But if he did, I hope he does it again. So there you go. And that actually was the question we ended on. Okay, so there you go. A little more information, a little more context, and having the right information will make all the difference. Y'all have a good day.